Salam everybody. Nice to see you again. Today we will be talking about the role of the schools, the role of the education. And this is a major question for all of us. And there are different views about why do we have schools? Why do we have education? Perhaps you also have some ideas about this. You know, you all go through schools. Some of you already went through the schools, and some of you are teaching in those schools. Have you ever asked yourself, why do we have education? Why do we have schools? Have you ever thought about it? When I was starting this university, I thought a lot about this, and I had to give a clear answer, in my mind to this question, and I came up with an answer and expressed it very briefly. Schools are there for intellectual independence. I hope you agree with this. But some people disagree. They say independent thinking is not good. How can we control people if each one thinks independently? So make them think within the box. And they think this is the role of education, to condition, to indoctrinate, and to format their brains. And they think education is a means to control the young people and to make them think in a particular way. I think the opposite way. In my view, education should teach students independent thinking. And education should make them independent thinkers. Education should teach them how to think outside the box. So this is the major question. What's the purpose of education? And there are many answers, and there are many philosophers thinking about this. And perhaps every person must think about this. And my answer to this, the purpose of education is intellectual independence. And teach students how to think outside the box. Some people think this is very dangerous. If everyone goes his or her way independently, how are we going to control society? How are we going to control those crazy young people? They think this is dangerous, but in my view, this is the source of power for society. This is the source of new ideas, innovations within a society. This is the source of progress and empowerment, for a society, rather than posing a danger to a society. So I can compare this with this famous proverb. It says, if you want to truly help people, you should not give them fish. You should teach them how to catch fish. So we can compare education to this. If professors, schools want to truly help the students, they should not give them ideas. They should teach them how to produce ideas. Okay? So this is what you should ask to your professors, to your schools, to your universities. Tell them, don't teach us ideas. Teach us how to think. Teach us how to produce ideas. Teach us how to produce new concepts, new theories, new methods, new perspectives. That should be the purpose of education. Otherwise, if schools give you ideas, you are intellectually dependent because you are not producing your own ideas. You have to always look for other people to give you ideas. If you don't know how to catch fish, you are dependent on people who have fish. You should always go and ask them, beg them to give you fish. So we have to change our view on the role of the schools. At the moment, it is seen that the role of the schools is to give knowledge to the students. I say no. Don't give knowledge to the students. Teach them how to produce knowledge. Then you become a true school. Then you become a true professor. And as a student, if you ask your professors, your schools, not to give you knowledge, but to teach you how to produce knowledge, then you are a true student. So, we have two questions. If we all agree that the new role we give to education and the schools is to make students intellectually independent, then we face two questions. Intellectual independence from what? And how? So two important questions we have to deal with, and I will address these two questions in my talk. First, intellectual independence from what? I identify three things which colonize us culturally and captivates our minds. These are Eurocentrism, media, and egoism. If somebody is controlled by these three things, she cannot be intellectually independent. He or she cannot think freely. His or her mind is controlled, remote control. So we have to emancipate ourselves from Eurocentrism, from the media, biased media, racist media, media which serves interest of international companies and big powers, and also egoism. So if you are an egoist person, you cannot think in a healthy way, because your thinking is under the control of your selfishness, your arrogance, which prevents you from thinking in an objective manner. So these are the three things that we have to free ourselves. You see that there is two external powers we have to fight against, and one internal factor within ourselves. So egoism is inside of us. Unless we free ourselves from these three factors, we cannot be intellectually independent. So what do we need to do to emancipate, to free ourselves from these three factors which invade, colonize, and captivate us? So we need comparative education. This is to free ourselves from Eurocentrism. Because Eurocentrism provides us only what happened in Europe. As if, Europe makes 99% of the world and maybe 1% for the rest of the world. So this is one-sided view, and it is used as a tool of exclusion, excluding non-Western people from civilizational process and proving the supremacy of the West. And also, it's a tool to alienate you to your own civilization. It's a tool to make you feel embarrassed from your own religion, culture, and civilization, to make you think we are stupid, to make you think that we are inferior. So don't be deceived by Eurocentrism. And unless you free yourself from this Eurocentrism, you cannot be intellectually free and independent. I was a captive of Eurocentrism until I read one book about Indian civilization and philosophy. Then I realized, wow, there is a world outside Europe. Because until then, all the books I read started civilization from Greeks and ended up with Europe and ignored the rest of the world. And thanks to Cemil Meriç, he wrote a book about India, which opened a new window for me to see what's happening in other parts of the world. So this was a beginning for me to disillusionment from Eurocentrism. And the critical thinking is needed to protect ourselves from indoctrination and also from the lies produced by media. And character building is needed so that we can protect ourselves from egocentrism. So these are the three things that can protect us from being intellectually dependent to Eurocentrism or indoctrinating educational system and also egocentrism. But the major question is, what are the schools for? And there are divergent, contradictory answers to this question. And everywhere, policymakers, statesmen, people in the business of education, this is what they discuss. And there are opposite answers to this question. So some people see that the purpose of education is to indoctrinate students, especially in nation states. That's the purpose of education. Teach young people national ideology. Teach young people Eurocentric worldview. Teach students selfishness about serving their own interests. So I call this MacDonald education, because this is standardized and served to the whole world. And everywhere you go, you see this type of education, just like the way you go to McDonald's in Japan, you are served the same food. You go to Mecca, you are served the same food. You go to San Francisco, you are served the same food. It is standardized, simplified, and quick, but not real. It's an illusion. It's not kebab. Okay? It's not kebab. So, but people are self-illusioned. They go to McDonald's, they like to eat it, and they deceive themselves that as if they are eating kebab. Okay? So same thing in education. Education is standardized by some companies. Same textbooks are taught everywhere. Same ideas are taught everywhere, but it's not real knowledge. The opposite view is critical education. Make students, critically think about it and teach them how to think for themselves, teach them how to produce ideas for themselves. So two schools of thought in the field of education. So MacDonald education is based on these following principles. Teach the students, to think within the box, give them ideas, but usually false ideas, and impose on them Eurocentric thinking, and make them egocentric people, running after their own self-pleasure and self-interest, and make their minds captive. produce captive minds, hack their brains, remote control their brains. So I call this brain hacking, mind hacking. So when your computer is hacked, what happens? You think you are using your computer, but in reality, somebody else is using your computer. You are under the illusion that you are using your own computer. So when your brain is hacked, you are under the illusion that you are using your own brain, but in reality, some other people is using your brain. They make you think in a particular way. They make you love certain things, and they make you hate certain things. So they make all the decisions for you, but you are under the illusion that you are making your decisions. Okay? So this is what I call captive minds, hacked minds. So this is what I call MacDonald education. And the opposite is the critical education, and its purpose is to emancipate students from Eurocentrism and make them proud of their own civilization. Also save them from egocentrism or any type of self-centrism. Make them open to whole humanity and respect the other, and also protect them from the biased media. So media, is it a tool of communication, information, or a tool of control? My experience shows me that media is now used as a tool of controlling perceptions and minds. Be careful about this. So if you let yourself to be controlled by the media, you cannot be intellectually independent. Okay, so this is how I end my talk. Briefly put, we have to be clear about the role of education, about the role of universities, that it is intellectual independence. And we should never compromise from our intellectual independence. Thank you.